An entitled Karen demands that her daughter be brought into our corporate training video that we're trying to shoot, refusing to take no for an answer, as well as grinding our entire production down to a screeching halt. So, in a desperate measure to get this lady out of our hair, we decide to trick her in the best way we could possibly think of on the spot. And I'm honestly so blown away that things worked out the way that they did. Here's what happened. So I was part of a team shooting a short corporate training video. It was on visitor policies for front office workers of a regional healthcare operation. It showcased various scenarios involving visitors that might come up on the job and the do's and don'ts in each case. Now, no one was chasing an Oscar here, but it was still quite high budget and professional. Well, except for one exception. The corporation had granted us access to a front office area at one of their locations to use as a set, but they hadn't thought to notify all the practitioners in the building that they would be shooting video. It was a weekend, when they're typically closed for business, so I guess they took for granted things would be shut down, but there are dozens of private offices of employees in these buildings, and a couple people chose to work weekends. As a result, their patients and clients kept streaming through the lobby while we tried to do this. For the most part, it didn't actually matter. Those who even noticed us at all could see we were filming and at worst took a couple of pictures and then left us well enough alone. That is, until Karen and Karen Jr. breezed in. For the sake of the story, we'll call them Wanda and Wanda Jr., because my mother is named Karen and she's a wonderful woman, and my ex-wife is named Wanda, and this is exactly the type of stuff that she would get up to. So anyways, we were shooting a scenario in which a third-party contractor approaches the desk attempting to gain entry, someone like a delivery person or a maintenance worker, but in this case, we were using a water guy. There's an elaborate procedure that's supposed to be demonstrated in the video. It takes several excruciating shots to get correct. We're finally approaching the finish line when suddenly we hear someone start to talk. "Oh my god, are you guys making a movie? My daughter is an actress. She'd be great in any movie. Give her any line to read, any part, and she will nail it. What kind of movie is it?" We had a PA who was assigned to play defense against anything like this, especially once we realized the building was semi-open to the public, but things had been going so smooth for so long that he took his eye off the ball. A crew member pulled up to the side and patiently explained, "Sorry ma'am, no movie. It's just a corporate thing. You can go that way to your appointment." They were trying to be polite but clearly signaling that they needed to move along. Well, as you might guess, that went in one ear and then immediately out the other. She grabbed Wanda Jr. and dragged her over, practically shrieking at this point. She said, "Oh good, no, that's so good. This'll be priceless for her reel. And you'd be lucky to have her, trust me. Any part, just name any part and she'll blow it out of the water. You should see her do Titanic actually. Just name the part, she's ready." Now, Wanda Jr. looked anything but ready. She looked exhausted, mortified, and a little bit nervous. I didn't know if she was scared by the confrontation or at the premise of being given a role. Not that it mattered. The content of these videos is dictated by powers that be. We can't just go adding anything. A more senior crew member tried to reason with them at this point, realizing the whole ordeal was really beginning to hold us up. He emphasized to Wanda, "This is a training video for this business. That means it will only ever be seen by people who actually work here, and not even every single one of them. There isn't even a credit section, so please." He then gestured broadly at our operation that had ground to a halt, hoping the point had been made. This lady then says, "Okay, so just put her in as an extra or something like that. She doesn't have to speak. God, you're all so sensitive." Now, you almost had to admire her dedication at this point, but she wasn't advocating for herself. She was just speaking on behalf of her daughter, who was cowering in a corner a ways away, seemingly totally uninterested by any of this. A few of us got together and discussed our next steps. We decided to just continue shooting and hope for the best. So we tried to do that, and you can probably guess what happened next. Wanda dragged Wanda Jr. back over and tried to plop her down in the middle of the shot. We reset at a slightly different angle and rolled again. Wanda herself made a ton of noise and did everything possible to be disruptive. We got together in a small group again, and we discussed waiting and coming back to finish another day, but we were already severely behind schedule for that day, so we would likely need an entire extra day of filming if we went this route, which was not logistically feasible. We then discussed calling the authorities. We did have a film permit, but that doesn't go so long a ways in keeping strangers out as you'd think it does, and it isn't necessarily enough to even get the police out at all. Finally, we didn't want to generate any negative buzz for the company. We film corporate-style videos often, and we're not keen on a reputation of being hostile to clients or creating hostile scenes inside public-facing areas. Then the PA had quite the idea. An upcoming scene was what to do when emergency services seek to enter enter the building, such as a fireman or a police officer. And as such, we had a cop costume and an actor primed and ready to play a cop all just laying around. We only had to cross our fingers that Wanda and Junior did not notice the cop had a same-day side hustle as a water guy. So it honestly took a little bit. Wanda planted her feet the entire time, taking glamour shots of Junior in front of our modest camera equipment. Then the supposed cop arrived. We recast him as a security guard so no one would go to jail for impersonating some public official. He swaggered up to the front desk and declared, "Someone contacted security, will need access," which is actually also more or less his first line. A few of us were nervous he'd forgotten the mission and defaulted to his practice content. But no, the desk lady was unflappable. Everyone was on their game. The desk lady said, "Thank you, sir. Was it an emergency or non-emergency call?" Which is also essentially the desk lady's first line. And at this point, we were all really holding our breath. One of the senior crew members stepped in and said, "Yes, hi, I'm the one that called you." He then briefly explains that we're trying to film as well as what's going on. Now, our supposed officer nodded and told Wanda quite authoritatively that she needs to move along. This section of the building is closed to the public and there's absolutely no loitering. But she just kept continuing her glamour shots. The security guard continued, "Photo and video are also strictly prohibited. That's a HIPAA violation. I might need to report that." Well, Wanda huffed and puffed and pouted, but she didn't know what to say. The best she could come up with was saying that she had an appointment. She then said, "I can be here if I want to." Well, our security guard responded by saying, "No, ma'am. You can be in the office where you had your appointment. And if they've asked you to leave, then you have to go. The rest of the building is closed except for traffic to and from the private offices." Think of it this way. If I have an appointment in Dr. Smith's office, am I then entitled to go to Dr. Jones' office just because it's in the same building? Or am I entitled to stay in Dr. Smith's office for the rest of my life because I had an appointment there? He stared blankly at Wanda, who threw a stapler off the desk in her fury. The security guard said, "Oh no, there will be none of that. Let's go before I have to escalate the matter." So we all held our breath, and we simply couldn't believe it when she finally left the building. Now, this was all going on during the writers and actors strike, so she yelled out as she left that she's going to report us to the unions as scabs, as if our corporate training video in the middle of America was a union acting job. While it was frustrating to be off schedule, I mostly feel bad for Wanda Jr., and I honestly hope she gets to spend plenty of alone time with Dad to even out the crazy. Wow, that's a really funny way to get rid of a Karen who's clearly bothering you when you're trying to work. Like seriously, it's just a corporate video. Your daughter's not going to be a star for being an extra in some video that nobody's going to watch. But with all that considered, this seriously was a crazy gamble, because either this was going to pay off big time or it's going to flop entirely. But honestly, this story is incredibly funny, and I find it incredibly hilarious that she fell for the security guard in the first place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My boyfriend doesn't want my 6-year-old child with ADHD at family events, and after he uninvited my son to one of these events at the last second, I am now questioning our relationship as a whole. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. I'm a 28-year-old female, and I've been dating my boyfriend for around 8 months. We met through mutual friends, and he has known since the day we met that I have a child from my previous marriage. The two of them have met and get along really well. When it's the three of us, there are no issues at all. My boyfriend stays over my place 1 to 2 nights a week, and it's important to mention that my son has severe ADHD that we are just starting to medicate him for. He struggles in social situations, especially when there are a lot of people he doesn't know or if he's in an unfamiliar environment. Once he's overstimulated, we usually have to leave an event. My boyfriend lives with his parents and 2 siblings also in their 20s. He's saving up for a house and is hoping to be buying one soon. His parents' house is not exactly kid-friendly. There are no kids in his extended family at all, and they have a lot of decorations that are breakable around the house. They also enjoy quiet and privacy. They have pretty strict rules even though the kids are all adults. There have been a couple of occasions where my boyfriend has politely uninvited me to things when I tell him my son is coming with me. This has happened with a Super Bowl party and a couple of family dinners with his parents and his aunts and uncles. He says it's not personal, and I need to remember that it's not his house. He says that certain things kids are just not invited to. And yes, they know I have a child because we talk about him all the time. Though I understand where he's coming from, I told him it's still hurtful to hear. Well, fast forward to this week. My boyfriend invited me to his parents' surprise anniversary party that him and his siblings are planning. He said all of his extended family are going, as well as all of his parents' business partners. I asked him if my son was invited this time, and And he said to me, of course he is. Well, the day of the party, I FaceTimed my boyfriend and I asked him what time that we should be there. He said he wasn't sure if my son should come along unless I could promise that he would behave. Well, I was hesitant to bring him anyways because I know that he would be the only child there. But he was basically uninviting me again unless I brought my son to a babysitter. This now has me questioning the entire relationship altogether. Should I take this as a sign that this is not a good fit for me? Or am I just being too sensitive? The logical part of me is thinking that he is right, and there are some events my child is just not ready for. But the emotional part of me is hurt, and it feels like the right person should accept this as a package deal no matter what. What should I do? Honestly, first and foremost, to answer your question, yes, I think there are some events that kids should not attend. Like there really are some situations where no, it would not be appropriate for kids to be at this place at all. And I'm willing to bet that this party very quickly became that kind of event. Also, I don't take this as your boyfriend being like, ew, I don't want your son there. But rather, I think he was just looking out for you and your son. He knows your son can get a little bit overstimulated, especially with the two of you still figuring out his ADHD. So maybe there's a silver lining here where he's like, yes, I do care about him, but this might not be the best place for him to be. It really doesn't sound like there was any malice attached to what he was saying. So in my opinion, I don't see this as being like a bad matchup or anything like that, but instead, I kind of think this might be him just cluing into what's going on. And yes, I totally agree with you. He did kind of drop this on you last second, and in my opinion, that is really not appropriate, but I think that's something you can at least discuss moving forward, because in my opinion, I don't think that this is completely a deal breaker. Am I the jerk for asking a hotel employee how they knew my name? Because right now, I'm really shaken up after my last interaction with them, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm staying in a hotel in Dublin City for the weekend, and I have a very late flight home tomorrow evening. Around an hour ago, I went to reception to inquire if they could keep my luggage safe after checkout and before my flight. There were two men at the reception that I spoke to. One was the young male receptionist who checked me in yesterday, and the other was an older man in his 50s, but he was not wearing the hotel uniform. The receptionist said, yes, that'll be no problem. And I smiled and said, that's wonderful. Then the older man said to me, what time's your flight? And then they said my name. I said the time, and then I realized that he knew my name, which surprised me, so I said, oh, that's funny. How did you know my name? I don't think I told you that. Now, I honestly believe my tone was more curious and confused, since it had caught me off guard. I honestly thought maybe I was wearing something with my name on it, and I even looked down just to see. The receptionist said, oh, I don't think he called you by your name. Maybe he said madam. I then said, oh, really? Oh, my mistake. Honestly, I was kind of relieved, if not a little bit embarrassed, but then the older man chimed in. He said, no, she's right. I know your name. It's my job to know everything and everyone here. I reply with a nervous laugh. I say, oh, that's a little bit weird. I expected he was going to say just kidding or that he's the manager or something like that, and he just prides himself on knowing everybody's names. I eventually clocked that it all seemed a bit weird since he didn't try to make it obvious that he was joking. The older man then asked me what room I'm in. I was caught up on how he knew my name, but wouldn't say how he knew it, so I started to feel a little bit worried. Out of instinct, I asked him, why do you want to know that? I'm really confused. I believe I said this timidly, but with a bit of anxiety, as I remember scanning both their faces as I said it. The receptionist interjects and smiles as if to reassure me. I think he just wants to offer you a late checkout. This makes me feel a little bit better, so I say something along the lines of, oh, I see, that's very nice of you, but I guess I'm just a little bit weirded out by the name thing. Sorry, I've had a long day. The older man then says to me, well, I was going to, but since you're being such a jerk, I won't do that now. Except he didn't call me a jerk. Now, when he said this really caught me off guard. Out of instinct, I said, I'm sorry, I think this has gone the wrong way, but it just confused me that we've never met and you know my name somehow. He then doubled down and repeats a similar line about how he just wanted to be nice, but I had to go and be such a jerk about it. And for context, he is not smiling or laughing at all. I can tell from the receptionist's face that he is shocked. I took a breath and then I slowly and calmly said, okay, well, I think that's it. I really don't know what to do with that kind of language. And then I gesture widely in his direction. I don't appreciate it and I don't have anything else to say. I go to leave and they both call me back, but I just raise my hand and I say, no, I'm done. And then I left the hotel for some air. Now, it's really important to know, he referred to me by my first name and not my surname. There's no photo ID associated with my reservation. Neither of them touched the computer between the time I got off the lift to the time that they realized I was standing in front of them. If they had pulled up my reservation, they would have known my room number. And finally, the older man was not there yesterday when I checked in. I remember because because I noticed how all the staff looked really young. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Okay, this screams very suspicious. There's no way on earth I would ever feel comfortable with someone doing something like that. Like seriously, that is super creepy. You're telling me this random man in his 50s suddenly just knows your name out of nowhere for no reason and is getting upset because you're questioning him on that? Like seriously, that's like creepy behavior. I really hope you got some names and went to a manager, because that kind of behavior is so unacceptable. Like seriously, all this guy had to do was be like, oh yeah, I pulled up your record and I can see your first name, instead of being like, ooh, hello there, I know your first name, give me your room number. Like, no buddy, that's creepy. If I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing and been like, wait a second, I can't get past this. How on earth do you know my name? So no, you are definitely not the jerk, and I really hope you escalated this to a much higher authority, because the way this guy was acting was really creepy, and you do not deserve to get treated like that. Am I the jerk for enforcing a rule in my house with the support of my roommate that we do not want any vaping in our apartment? Because after I told my sister about this new rule, she got incredibly upset, furious that she can't vape in my apartment anymore, claiming that going through withdrawal would be absolutely horrible. So at this point, I honestly feel horrible and I really now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I have an apartment with one other roommate for school. We both hate the smell of things like vapes and cigarettes, and I also personally hate anything with nicotine because of how addictive it is. I've seen what it does to people, and personally, I just don't want that stuff in my house. Since none of our friends smoke cigarettes or vape, we never really made a rule about it. Well, my spring break was last week, and my younger sister came to visit for a weekend. And as you might be guessing based on the story, she kept hitting her vape. It was like it was just second nature to her to grab the thing and take a hit. I asked her to stop because the smell was bothering me, and while she did apologize, she kept getting defensive about hitting it so much because she can't just go cold turkey for a weekend. And honestly, that's fair. While I've never experienced withdrawal from nicotine, I have experienced some withdrawals from antidepressants, and it's horrible. I would never wish that on anybody. But because it was still bothering me, I went to my roommate about adding no vaping to our official house rules. Now, he was cool with it because we both don't like having that stuff in our space. And since we agreed to that, I texted my sister. The text was brief, and I just explained that if she came to visit again this semester, she could not vape here anymore. Well, to put it bluntly, she blew up at me about it. She reminded me that withdrawal is horrible, so she can't just give up for a weekend to see me. She also said that it's not that big of a deal and that she'll just use it in the bathroom if it bugs me that much. And you know what? Her reaction just honestly made me want to reinforce this rule even further. But at the same time, I feel bad because I'm basically forcing her to stop doing something just because I don't like it. I'm not trying to be some guardian angel helping people end their nicotine addiction, nor am I asking for her to stop vaping completely. I don't want to not allow my sister into my apartment over some flavored air. It honestly just comes down to the fact that I don't want that trash in my apartment. I later went to some friends and their responses are mixed. A few of my friends said stuff along the lines of how I'm just setting a boundary, similar to someone who doesn't drink asking his guests not to drink only while they're in his home, but other friends are saying that I'm trying to force my opinions on vaping onto my sister, or I'm trying to force her to quit vaping altogether. But seriously, that is not what I want to do though. We're both adults, and while I'm not happy that she vapes, it's not my place to act all high and mighty. She is her own person, and she can do whatever she wants. I just don't want some things to happen in my house. Now, my sister is more than welcome to step outside, but I don't think that's an option because I'm worried it's unreasonable since I live on the 5th floor of my building. So honestly, am I the jerk for trying to enforce this kind of rule in my house? What should I do? Honestly, in my opinion, I don't think this is outside of anything that would be reasonable in someone else's home. Like, think about it. This is your place that you live in. You and your roommate came to this conclusion together, and you both have decided that no, you don't want vaping to happen in the house. I don't think that's unreasonable at all, and honestly, I think that's a completely normal thing to ask of someone. For me though, the biggest red flag is the fact that she started screaming at you about this. I mean, she seriously does not like the fact that you're trying to say, hey, I don't want this in my house, which kind of leads me to believe that yes, this is an addiction of some kind. She clearly has like some kind of dependency on the vaping to try and like function as a human being, and the fact that she can't stop for even just a little bit and not do this for an extended period of time is kind of worrying to me. It really screams to me that she does have a problem with this, and it really seems like this might be a little bit deeper than what you might be expecting. And if that's the case, then maybe she shouldn't visit until she has this under control. Or if she does come to your house, then maybe she actually should step outside, try and get herself under control with all the withdrawal symptoms that she's experiencing, and then she can come back up to your apartment. But in my opinion, if I'm being completely honest, and maybe I'm the jerk in this situation, but it really seems like she's just trying to guilt trip you to try and get her way. And that part alone is like really inappropriate. Because at the end of the day, this is your house. And if you don't want any vaping to happen inside of your house, then honestly, she can either respect that or she can just not visit. And in my opinion, based on the way she's acting, it might be better for her to stay home instead of coming to your apartment. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.